Should be good.
All right, everybody. Hello out there in the High Ticket Sales Collaborative. It's Janet here, and I'm here with Marc Mawhinney from the Natural Born Coaches program. And so Marc is amazing. So we're here today to talk about lead generation again, because when I did my little survey recently, I found that one of the big challenges for coaches is ongoing lead generation. And so we all know there's ways to do paid advertising and all of that sort of thing. But what I'm trying to focus on in the month of December is how to do some organic lead generation. So last week we had the opportunity to talk a little bit about building up your email list and creating a funnel. And today our subject is really organic Facebook lead generation. And Marc is an expert in that area. So I will say, hi, Marc, by the way.
Hello.
I don't want you to just have to sit there while I go on and on about how great you are. Anyway, I actually was in one of Marc's programs earlier this year when I was launching my Facebook organic strategy. And so that's why this group even exists. Because of Marc, I got some great input as to how to create a Facebook group of my own, as well as how to use my personal profile to get more friends who are ideal clients, and also to expand my influence and reach on Facebook. So Marc's a true expert, and I'm happy to have you here, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Marc.
Yeah, well, and your group's great. I'm a member, so I've been in there watching what you're doing, and you've been active and lots of good conversations going. So you get it. You get the value of organic stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of coaches, consultants, online entrepreneurs don't get it. They don't utilize it the way that they could be. So everybody has this thought that you have to have a huge war chest and dump tens of thousands of dollars into Facebook ads. And not to knock Facebook ads, but a lot of people, especially starting out, don't have that kind of bankroll to put towards the ads. And I think the problem with ads sometimes is you shortcut it, or you try to shortcut it where you don't develop your message and your voice properly because you're relying on just dumping money into ads. The advantage with organic is you have to be active. You have to be writing and shooting your videos and speaking your own voice. And it really helps you hone your message as you go along. So that's why I'm a big fan of organic.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about that before we came on, that, part of the new program that I'm going to be offering will include the done for you part of sales and marketing. However, there is that requirement that the client, the coach that we're working with, has to position themselves in such a way that we can drive all the traffic we want, we can drive sales. But if that person doesn't have some sort of positioning on social media, then it's kind of like driving it to nothing, right? So
yeah, and there's a myth out there, people saying, oh, well, you can't be too active on your personal Facebook or people will unfriend you, they'll get annoyed. My answer would be, if people are going to unfriend you for sharing your message and talking about what you're passionate about, then do you really want to have them as friends? But then there's another myth that people say, well, it's against Facebook's terms of service if you breathe anything business related. And there's certain ways to do it. If you spam your Facebook and it's 1 million posts a day, buy my stuff or whatever, yeah, that's a little different. But what we're talking about, you're combining your own personal life, personal story with some business stuff in there too, because people want to work with a real person as opposed to a logo or some faceless business. So you're really using your personal part of your story, your message to sell and to get clients that way.
Well, one of the things that you suggested to me that has really worked great is to promote my own group on my personal page. So then once I get people in my group, I know that they want to hear about sales and high ticket, right? So it's great to be able to do get new friends, introduce them to what I do a little bit on my personal page, and then get them to join into the group. So that really seems to be a great strategy. And what I've also noticed is it's a little slow at first in the group, but now all of a sudden it's gaining great traction and it's growing by itself. I don't even know where these people are coming from, but it's a wonderful.
Yeah. People nowadays are terribly impatient. They want to, Facebook groups, you can open one in about 30 seconds. So they think, oh, it's easy to open up a group and people are going to beat down the doors to get in and they'll be throwing money at me and they'll be monetized in a day or so. And that would be nice, but it's not really realistic, right? So it does take some time. But in my experience, if you're active in your group, if you really are doing what you should be doing in the group for 30 days, you're going to see some huge results. With it. I don't know how long you found that it took to get traction with your group, but in my experience, most of them 30 days of promoting it and being active in the group or so, they noticed some really cool changes with it.
Well, let's put it this way. I think I started your program in August or it might have been July, because I know I was on vacation and I had made this commitment that I was really going to take some time off. But the one thing that I kind of made a little exception was that I was going to do your program while I was on vacation.
Thank you.
And so I was doing it, right? And so little by little, I was doing the things you were saying, and it wasn't a lot of work. It was like, step by step. And so say that took me August, September, October, and here it is, right? Well, November is really when my group started to kind of go crazy. So yeah, there you go, 90 days. And I admit, I was the Facebook resistant. So those of you who are out there, you can see my age. So you know that I'm probably not, the millennial person that just loves getting on Facebook Live and loves sharing everything about my life on Facebook. And so I had to beat myself through a lot of resistance there, particularly in the area of personal. Marc was very encouraging, and really not even just so much what you said, but by example, just by seeing what you do. So I want to talk about your group, because you have probably one of the most successful groups, at least in our industry, that I know, the Coaching Jungle. So tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing that and, what the great things are that are happening there.
So I launched a Coaching Jungle. It was late 2015, so it's a little over 2 years old now. And where it came about was I had a previous Facebook group for past guests on my podcast, Natural Born Coaches, but it was only people who had been on my podcast. So I had 350 people or whatever in there, and it was a good group and stuff. But with that group, I was getting a bunch of coaches requesting to join. Even though the name of it was Natural Born Coaches Past Guests, they weren't noticing the past guest part, and they were just joining, right? Because they saw coaches. And I felt bad because I had to turn all these people away. So eventually it got through my thick skull that, hey, I should have a Facebook group for all coaches, instead of just being past guests of the show. And I ended up shutting down that group and focusing my efforts on the Coaching Jungle, which, as I said, started late 2015. And now we've grown to almost 9,000 members, and we should hit 10,000 early in the new year. So that's where it started. And I could say now that between the Facebook group and my email list, I do daily emails. That's where a big majority of my business is coming from, those two sources.
All right. So let's talk a little bit, because, Justin Wise was on last week talking about the power of the email list. And I know you have a good list. So how did you build your list?
Slowly at first, because it wasn't doing paid advertising. So my list was built by offering freebies, different lead magnets. The podcast helped because people were going to the website and then to listen to podcasts, and they would be hit with the opt-in. But one other thing I did, I just launched a solo show about a month ago, the Marc Mawhinney Show, real original name for it. And even since then, my list has grown by a few hundred because people are checking out the new show. There's a new lead magnet over there and all that stuff. With the email list, before I started doing daily emails in April of 2016, my list was essentially dead. I shouldn't say it was dead, but I didn't get much from it. back then, before I started daily, I would do maybe once a week. I would send out an email, and it was inconsistent. And it wasn't in my voice that I was doing I found for social media. And when it came to email, I was talking a little bit more of the markety speak. You know, they all talk with the same, you could just tell. And I said, this isn't me. So when I started doing the daily emails, April 2016, I also opened it up and said, I'm just going to let her rip and say what I think, you know, and put it out there. And in the very beginning, I lost people because all of a sudden they were getting daily emails and they're thinking, gee, I was hearing from Marc once every week. Now I'm getting them daily. What's going on? But since then, the people that remained were more committed to me, that we had a better relationship. But then also it's grown with the right people. Because when someone opts into my list, it's very clear right from the beginning, hey, it's a daily email, FYI, so they're not surprised.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about your open rates and things like that, doing daily? Because, I mean, that does seem like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get too hung up on open rates. I think people put too much emphasis on them. Really, at the end of the day, it comes down to sales and money in your bank account.
Yeah, that's true.
You could have the best open rate in the world, but if you're not offering anything or if you're not converting. So my open rate generally, you know, I check in from time to time. It's usually 20% for a list of a couple thousand, you know.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that's good. I don't get too hung up if one day is 18.8%. I have some emails are over 25% if it's got a catchy title or something like that. But I don't really stress about open rates with it because they're not really terribly accurate. There's different things when it comes to mobile that they don't get counted and different things like that. So don't get too hung up on open rates. When I first started my list, when I had my first, 50 people on it, when I was a new coach, it was probably all family and friends, and I had a 60 or 70% open rate, but no sales because it was relatives and things that weren't coaches. So with the lower open rate now, which is going to happen as your list grows, so the open rate's going to go down. But I've had a lot of people who've told me that, Marc, I because they're into the daily thing, they're reading it every day, and they say I look for it and I read it every day. So I'm a huge fan of daily emails. Anyone who tells you, oh no, that's too much, and I would unsubscribe and don't do that, they probably have never tried it themselves. And I got into this debate yesterday in a big Facebook group because some people are like, oh, that's too much, I'd be annoying. And I said, have you ever actually tried it? And really quickly, the analogy I use with that is people say daily emails don't work. It's the same as, you know, with the Super Bowl. I know some diehard football fans that hate the commercials. They're like, oh, God, I hate the halftime show and the commercials. I just want to watch football, right? Does that mean that it's a mistake for companies who are paying $5 million for the Super Bowl ads, ad time? No. They're paying $5 million because they're coining it. Those are highly valuable spaces. It works. So even if you and I were getting annoyed at the ads and we want to go to the fridge to get beer and chips from the kitchen when the ads are on, doesn't mean that companies shouldn't be buying it. It's the exact same way with daily emails.
Yeah, well, I think that's fine. I mean, that's your email strategy. And if there are people who still want to follow you, but they don't want daily emails, then they either unsubscribe there, but they still follow you in the group.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You have so many touch points. So I remember when I was first discovered you, which was because I was in, you know, a mentorship and a coaching program, which, which is with Traffic and Funnels. A lot of people know those guys, Chris and Taylor. But they're big, they're really big on organic. So the first thing that I had to do was go find groups. And so that was how I discovered you, Marc. And the thing I remember emailing you and saying, can you just do this for me? Because you're everywhere now. Like it was almost like I got online and discovered you in one place, but then you were everywhere. and your stuff is good. I mean, you're obviously a good writer.
Thank you.
But, is that your background or how did you learn that?
Back in my past life, I was in real estate for a decade. Back when I started when I was 21 years old, and I did keep a blog for a couple of years that I wrote daily, and I really enjoyed it. So that probably didn't hurt years later as a coach to have that background. But no, I really do enjoy writing, and I enjoy creating content. It doesn't feel like work. And the way that I think I said to you is I would love to help you, but if I was writing as Janet, it just would lose something because it would be, I can't write in your voice. And this is where people go wrong. Yeah, I had a client once who hired someone from Fiverr to write blog posts. And I told him, I wish you hadn't done that because it sounded like a robot. It just wasn't right. So you can't shortcut this. You got to write it. Take my content, for example. I've got, I'm sure some corny jokes I put in there, and I talk about Star Wars and sometimes superheroes, pop culture. I've got a weird Canadian sense of humor, but that's me. And if I try to go out there and I try to write or shoot videos like Brendan Bouchard or Gary Vaynerchuk, would just come across fake, because that's just not me. And there's too many people in the coaching world who are thinking, okay, I like so-and-so, Gary Vaynerchuk, Brendan Bouchard, Tony Robbins. I'm just going to try to talk like him because it's working for him. And the example I always give is after Tony Robbins' Netflix documentary or movie came out, I'm Not Your Guru. In that movie, Tony swore, I don't know, 500 times. He's dropping the F-bomb. Immediately after that movie came out, every coach in my feed, it was like F this and F that. And if you don't go for your dreams, you're an effing piece of crap and all this stuff, right? And they would think, hey, it works for Tony Robbins. Well, Tony Robbins could probably say anything at this point. He's going to get business, but that wasn't them. It just didn't feel real from following some of these coaches. And that's where there's a disconnect. You got to speak in your own voice.
Yeah. And it takes a little bit of practice to do it. So I'm getting more comfortable at it. And, and it's the same thing with the Facebook Live. I mean, I really resist that a lot, getting on video, and you're, so comfortable to do it. And, I think I'll just jump on Facebook Live and talk about something that just popped into my head. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I know that Facebook really likes that, right? So
they love it. Yeah. I've given up on YouTube videos. I don't bother. In the past, I would record, upload the video, share the link on Facebook. Facebook doesn't like that because they don't want people leaving Facebook. So they're not going to show a YouTube link to as many people on your list with their algorithm and all that stuff. So you are better off shooting Facebook Live. But the other advantage I like with Facebook Live is you don't have that, when you're doing a video, sometimes you could shoot one 20 different times. Oh, I didn't like that. I'm going to redo it. Didn't like that.
Can't do that on Facebook Live.
Yeah, it's like pushing you into the deep end of the pool, and then you got to swim, and you can. It's not like it's rocket science, but it forces you to just do it and not procrastinate, not get into that perfectionist mode that so many coaches can get into. And that's what I love about Facebook Live. I won't go back to YouTube again. I know it works for some people. They like it, but me, I'm more Facebook Live.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, for anybody out there who does feel that it's a little difficult, do what I'm doing. Interview somebody, right? It makes it easier, but it also makes you have to show up because you've got a commitment with somebody. But then you have to do all the talking, right? You actually have a guest who's comfortable and can do a lot of the talking. So
but you have nothing to, I mean, you're comfortable on here and everything like that. I've been with some people who've been deathly afraid of recording, and you can tell. And with yours, I don't see anything like, any reason why you wouldn't do solo Facebook Live. So I would hop out there today and do one.
Okay, there you go. So you guys, now he's challenged me, so I'm going to have to do it, right? So I think Facebook is a gold mine that I didn't realize, and I think a lot of people don't realize. And so hanging around with us is going to be a way for people to kind of take their steps, right? Dip their toe in the water. And if you really want a crash course, you can join Marc in his, 10 clients in 90 days program?
Yeah.
And that was the program that I was in. It's a great program because it's just really simple to just take the steps little by little and get yourself positioned. So, I excel in helping people with their sales, but I don't excel necessarily in the lead generation piece of it. So it's really great when somebody can come to the table and say, okay, well, I already have an email list. I already have a following on Facebook. So now, Janet, help me sell, right? Help me create my high ticket program and sell it. Okay, now we have something to work with. But if people come and they don't know lead generation, then we have to go way back to the beginning.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but as much as people want to paint by numbers, hey, just, I'll pay you and set it all up for me. I don't want to do anything. There's always going to be some heavy lifting on the part of the person, right? You can't shortcut this. And I see a lot of people that get all pumped up from reading the 4-Hour Work Week, and they want to automate absolutely everything. And they don't want to have to do any of this stuff, but you're really going to have to, especially in the early days, do it. And then as time goes on, you could go a little bit more on cruise control, but it doesn't even feel like work to me. I feel guilty if someone says, I talk to people locally, let's say friends who work 9 to 5, and they're like, what, you work from home? You put posts on Facebook. And I'm like, well, it's more than that. But they're thinking you get to work in your slippers and pajama pants while there's 10 feet of snow out here in Canada and with our winters. And I'm like, yeah. So I start to feel a little guilty. Hey, this is actual, I could have a life, a business this way, but it's a lot of fun. If you're doing what you should be doing, it's not going to feel like work. But I will say an important point is choose a content creation that you like. So if you absolutely hate writing, don't do writing, shoot videos or do podcast interviews or whatever. Don't do something that you absolutely detest. And if the thought of it's just like, oh, I hate writing, I don't want to do it. Okay, find what you enjoy doing and then do more of that.
Yeah. So, we have about another 5 minutes or so. So I want to jump in a little bit to kind of looking at all the different areas that you're doing organically. Do you buy ads now too? Do you pay?
I've dipped my toe in the Facebook ads arena, and I am going to be buying. That's in the new year. So I've hired somebody. We're working on an evergreen funnel system essentially. So okay. I am looking at different things to scale up, but to this point, I've been a Facebook ads. I won't say a Facebook ads virgin, but I've spent maybe $2,000 on Facebook ads in 4 years. But that will change in the next month or two as the ads get online.
So, for all of you out there who don't want to jump into putting money into Facebook ads right now, but you want to build your business to multiple 6 figures, here's the perfect example of someone who has done it organically. And so talk about the podcast, because I know that's another big part of your strategy. You've got the group, you've got the, whatever you do with the other posting on Facebook, and then you've got your...
Well, I mean, the 3 places I get business, I'll be honest, my 3 pillars are, one is podcasting. And when I say podcasting, I mean on both sides of the mic. So I'm a sucker for punishment. I have 2 podcasts, Natural Born Coaches and my solo show, the Marc Mawhinney show that I just launched. So, but then I'm also going out on things like this, or I'm going out on people's podcasts a couple a week usually. So my first way to get business is podcasting. Second way is Facebook, and that's a Facebook group and personal Facebook posting, the organic stuff. And then the third way is my email list. So if I'm email marketing, so if I'm doing those 3 things, I know that I'm good, I'm going to be good, and I'm going to be full. But your 3 may be different, because they can be completely different.
Well, you don't have to have all 3 of them, but no. I think it's great that you use the podcast and the Facebook to build your list. And then you use your email, obviously, campaigns to drive people to you, for calls and into your funnel. And now you're creating a new funnel. So that's awesome. We're going to be talking about the power of the funnel coming up in the next segment, probably next month. But, the whole lead generation, it doesn't do you any good to have a funnel if you can't get people into it. So yeah.
So I will say with podcasting that it's very important that you actually have a business on the back end. I talk to some people who have a podcast, they're getting listeners and all that stuff, but then they don't have an actual product or service, and they're frustrated. They're like, I'm not making any money from it. Well, you don't have an offer there. It's like going into a store and having empty shelves. So it's 2 parts to that puzzle. You have pieces. You have to have the podcast, but then you actually have to have a business there as well. But with the podcast guesting, for example, my first year, I went on close to 100 shows as a guest. And now I'm anywhere from pretty close to 175 to 100 probably this year, because it exposes me to whole new audiences, networks who I would have never connected with. And I just have to show up, do my thing. And then the host is handling the editing or the tech stuff like you're doing here. And so it's a lot of work to do your own podcast. And if you're not into doing all that tech stuff and things, get out on other shows. And it's going to take a little bit of work to do that when you're pitching yourself. we could do a whole other thing about getting onto podcasts, but a couple quick things. I recommend having a one sheet, which if you don't know what that is, Google it. The one sheet, it basically has your picture, bio, links, and everything all in one place. So that will make it easier to get on shows. You'll look more credible than if you just send an email, say, hey, can I get on your show? Listen to some of the person's episodes, or at least show that it's not copied and pasted messages. Some people copy and paste to me and I can tell it for my show, and I'm like, nope. So say, hey, if, for example, if you had a podcast, I would say, hey, Janet, I loved episode number 17 that you had with Joe Smith. He was that talked about blank. I founded my business blank. By the way, I would love to be a guest on your show. Here's what we can talk about. I've attached my one sheet. Let me know if you want to set it up and do it that way. So there's just a few tips to help get out on the shows.
Yeah. Oh, you're a wealth of information, but I really appreciate you coming on, because I think that, this whole lead generation thing isn't as hard as people make it out to be, but it does require a strategy. And so as we create different, ideas and put them out there, people can kind of pick and choose what resonates with them and put some sort of a strategy in place for 2018, that this is how I'm going to work on my funnel. There's more than just what we're talking about, but the social media piece, I'm going to be bringing someone on later who will be talking about LinkedIn. For a lot of people who want to target that B2B, that's a great avenue as well. So there's more, but I think this is the meat right here, because it's working.
Yeah, it takes consistency and discipline. It's not always fun to do that, and but it's that you have to be a robot in a lot of ways every day. I know I'm going to be doing X number of posts, and what I find for personal Facebook and also groups, you have to be posting 3 to 4 times a day in each, which sounds like a lot. But just to get out there, that's the numbers. Once a day isn't going to do it. You got to be more active.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. Good information to have. Well, thanks, Mark, for coming on. You want to wrap up by saying something that I might have forgot to ask you about, or?
No, I think you covered everything in there. So now we've challenged you to start doing solo Facebook Lives. We'll be watching.
Yeah, I actually did a challenge back a while ago. I was supposed to do 21 days. I don't think I made it even through the whole 21 days, but I did do it. And it was challenging for me. So,
well, actually, I'll share a really quick story. This was in my email I sent to my list today, because it actually reminds me of a lot of coaches. So back in 1973, an 81-year-old janitor in Chicago died. His name was Henry Darger. I don't know if you've heard the story, but he was a rector.
Yeah, I get your emails. I read this morning, but share it.
So you can go make a sandwich. I'll tell the story if you're probably sick of hearing it. But for anyone who hasn't heard that story, everyone thought Henry Darger was just a normal janitor and nothing special about it. And after he died, they went into his apartment, small apartment in Chicago, and they found that he had written amazing works of fiction. He had a 15,000 word book they'd been working on since 1910 when he was a young man. And he had a sequel that was 8,500 words. And then he had all these amazing art that he created to support the stories, to help tell the stories. And no one had any clue. And he's now become the most famous outsider artist that's out there. And I thought, wow, imagine if people actually knew about him when he was alive, if he hadn't hit it. And I think a lot of coaches are like that. There's a lot of Henry Dargers that have great stuff that they're working on behind the scenes, but they're not actually putting it out there for people to benefit from it. And you don't want to be 81 years old and people find a bunch of stuff after you die and say, wow, this was great. So just get it out there. It's not going to help people if you don't get it out there.
Yeah, well, I'm all for that, because I'm all about leaving the legacy. But yeah, I'd like to actually be able to create it while I'm alive and enjoy it. So
exactly.
Yeah, thanks for that. All right, Mark. Well, it's been fun, and we'll be seeing you over in the coaching jungle. And
yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Bye, everybody.